An interesting thing when I asked for the recommendations of the very best salespeople is that so many of them are classically unnatural salespeople, meaning that they are not the gregarious life of the party person, and in some cases had the choice to do many different things that paid well. Because I always say people get into sales for one or two reasons. One is they're money motivated. The second is the other options aren't that good. And most fit into the latter, meaning that they didn't find the place, they stumbled into it. The other alternatives weren't that great. And then there's this other group that are like, well, what I'm doing is okay, but I like a variable income. I'd like to get rewarded for the stuff that I do, the extra stuff that I do. And that category, there seems to be a correlation there. And catch me if I'm wrong, in that they find a different way of doing it, meaning that they apply the skills that they learned in the other profession to sales. Now, this is kind of a maverick type of thing, somebody outside the herd. And it's dangerous to be out there because managers aren't sure. Managers like to have a little bit of control, soldier type action, everyone marching in the same way. Great managers let the people go free enough to see if it works or not. And sometimes it does. Sometimes it doesn't. So today we've got clearly a self-admitted unnatural salesperson, came out of a scientific background, applied that to selling, and has been enormously successful. My point here is that you don't need to be the personality of sales. It can help. People do need to want to talk with you, and you need to bring something for them, value, information, something more than just rapport and sports and weather. You can start there, but that runs out pretty quick. And if they don't want to talk about sports and weather, it goes away really quick. So I think you're going to enjoy this interview. I'll sum it up for the end. If you're in the courses, make sure you're checking out the office hours. I threw in a free one or an additional one into the Winning the Complex sale. I had done this presentation for a company. I recorded it and put it into the course because it was 100% applicable. And instead of doing it separately, I just, here you go, piece of gold. If you're not in the courses yet, ask yourself, how many new meetings are you getting a week? Outbound, not inbound, not with existing customers, not from a referral. Outbound to your dream accounts, the people that you really would like to have a conversation with, to see if you can build curiosity into interest. The most common answer I get is one, and I think they're exaggerating. How would you like to have your calendar full of that? And now's the time to do it. It's now or 10 years ago, when you can't do it 10 years ago, so do it now. Go to b2brevenue.com and check it out. Also, some people like just, short sales tips. And if you like that, check out my other podcast, Sales Questions, brutally honest answers, where it's short form, no intro, right to the core. I think it's like 8 minutes is like the average. If you like that type of thing. If you want more strategic views about like hiring, developing, growing your career, there's two other shows. The B2B Revenue Leadership Show and the Sales Leadership Show, where I interview the world's best sales leaders. Let's get into the interview, and I'll sum it up at the end. Hey, Michael, welcome to the show. As a way of getting started, give us a little background on yourself.
Hey, Brian. Thanks for having me on. My name is Michael Ford. I'm from the Kansas City area. Grew up in the Midwest. Went to St. Louis for college at Maryville University and got a biochemistry degree there. So actually, in prep for this interview, I was doing a little research on your background as well and found out that you're pretty technical background and ended up branching into sales afterwards. So I think we have that in common a little bit. But got a biochemistry degree, was, really a bench scientist in college, and educational work experience, which was, it was interesting. It was fun. I mean, it was really challenging, and I enjoyed that part of it, the mental challenge of that. And did actually what's called analytical chemistry, and was focused on method development for a company called Sigma Aldrich, on really measuring the purity of the fine chemicals they were shipping out. So pretty technical, but definitely very far from sales.
So how'd you make that bridge, that gap?
It was probably a similar realization that you came to, that I looked at the bench scientist next to me that really couldn't care any less about his job, and looked at me, putting, even though it was just an educational, an internship type experience, putting my heart into the job, and showing up early and staying late when it needed to happen. And I realized based on these 2% raises that will come every year, it's going to take me a long time to make anything significantly more than the person next to me that really doesn't give a crap. So that led me to kind of figure out and start having conversations with people. And I actually had a guest speaker come to my one of my biochemistry lectures in college that was a sales rep for Shimadzu. And they're an instrument manufacturer that actually sells to companies like the company that I was working for in college. And he flat out told us how much he made. And I was like, no way. That's not a real number. He's like, no, this is the goal I set for myself when I joined the company. He's like, I hit it within the first 2 or 3 years. And I was like, that's unbelievable. That money's out there for people that are willing to put the time and effort in. And, since then I really focused and kind of shifted my direction. At that point in my academic studies, I had finished all my technical classes. So I actually shifted and started taking a lot of business classes, ended up with a business minor, and really started pursuing conversations with people that in my small network at that time that had experience in sales or business development and leadership, and tried to figure out what it was going to take to get to that level. Because at that point, I started to get really hungry.
And I think people today seem to be totally focused on like external rewards as opposed to internal. And people kind of either put it down or say it, kind of muddy the waters about it. And I say, what could be better?
And that was my opinion. I was willing to do all the work in the world, and willing to put in the time and effort. So I was like, what's bad about this trade-off? And then come to realize that, I've been really fortunate to be at organizations and have, immediate supervisors, sales leadership that have really, let me do my job, which is amazing when you get people that treat you like an adult, and let you manage a business, let you manage a territory the way you want to. And I flourished under that environment. So I've been pretty autonomous since I graduated college at 21. Took an inside sales role actually with Quest Diagnostics, a laboratory company in the Kansas City area, and that position itself was not fun at all. I spent 7-8 months, on the phone every day, long hours going through call lists, and reaching out to physician offices of all people. I think, having now had experience on the B2B side and talking directly to physician offices, I think it was even harder to get, a nurse, an MA, a receptionist that's answering the phone in a physician office to care about your value proposition when you're calling cold from a diagnostic lab. It was a tough deal. So that, kind of cut my teeth and made me eager to get out into a full outside role that I could feel like I had a bigger impact, and was lucky enough to get that, 7-8 months into the role, and moved into a full territory.
That's it, because it's just an ocean of people in their 20s that are hyper ambitious, and there's no reward. There's no real, feedback other than enjoy your work. But when you're in your 20s, what do you see everywhere? Things that cost money.
Right? Exactly. That you can't afford, that, your friends, maybe the family came from money, they've got all this stuff. But my background, both my parents were small business owners. My dad was a painter contractor. My mom was in insurance, and then ended up starting a small financial planning firm, but grew up really modest, and, understood the value of money, but they didn't have any great advice for me as far as going out and and figuring out how to start a sales career. So it was, a lot of figure it out on your own. And one thing I did encounter was a lot of generosity from good and great salespeople and good and great sales leaders, in particular with their time, mentoring. And I had a lot of conversations leading into positions later on, or leading into just kind of building my knowledge base, with people that really had no business taking the time to talk to me, but did take 30 minutes to grab coffee with me to help me understand what they did, how they got there, the things that they did to make themselves successful. So kind of taking that all in, becoming a little bit of a sponge, so to speak,
Yep.
was really beneficial for me, coming from a technical background, not necessarily having the personality of the quote unquote salesperson, and trying to figure out how to go and make some real money in the business.
And that's it. I think too many people think if you don't have that gregarious life of the party personality, that you can't be successful in sales.
Yep, absolutely. And I've got those friends, that I've met through sales that are that person, and they're very successful. But on the flip side, I've been successful in my own right, and definitely wouldn't, characterize myself as somebody like that. So it is interesting that you can, I don't know, maybe adapt and change and understand what the requirement is for, the position, for the role, and really make sure that you position your own strengths to make yourself successful.
Yeah. And how was that adjustment? Because you weren't natural at it. You hadn't done it before,
It
but you
was
wanted to do it.
it was really awkward at first, especially, it's one thing going from phone sales that you're kind of, there's this
Yeah.
divider, and even on Zoom sales, there's kind of this, divider
Right.
of like,
There's
okay, I'm
distance.
safe, I'm behind this wall. Yeah, they can say no, they can hang up the phone, but I got over that quickly. And then when you start going and cold calling, for me, it was on physician offices, and starting to cold call in physician offices, walking in the front door. I remember going in my first few, and yes, I knew I wanted to do this. I knew I was driven. I knew I wanted to do it. But every once in a while, I get cold feet outside the office, and I think to myself, okay, what is my pitch here? What am I going to say to the receptionist? How am I going to get past the front desk? And it does take repetition and allowing that to build your confidence. I think that helped me out. And I've had plenty of doors closed in my face. I've had plenty of people say, what are you even doing here? Like, we didn't ask for you to come here. It's like, well, I know you didn't ask for me to come here, but I'm here anyway. So let's have a conversation. So
The drop by is hard.
yeah, it is. It is. And that's what my first role, there was a lot of that, because it was a little bit more of a commodity in terms of what I was selling. The relationship salesperson had always thrived in that type of role. So it was a little bit tough for me to adapt to, but it was a great learning process. And I look back at it now and love that I did it.
And what did you do as far as your mindset? How did you process it so that you could get over it?
So for me, I had to kind of take a step back and start leaning on my strengths a bit more, because I think I was trying to be that person that was the center of the room, that was the focus of attention from a social perspective. And it took me stepping back to say, okay, what are my real strengths, and how can I use those to my advantage, versus trying to be somebody that I'm not. I'm never going to be that guy that walks in the room and is the center of attention. And that's totally fine. I've accepted that at this point. But when I was younger, I was like, I have to fit this mold. So for me, my top strengths, I've always kind of leaned back on the strengths finder quiz that I did, coming out of college probably, but I was a learner, achiever, and analytical were my top three. So I figured out really how to use those and pretty much prepare better than anybody else. And then find out, going into a meeting, obviously I have a clear objective, but make sure I understood the client's needs, make sure I understood what the fit was probably going to be for my product, or the couple questions I needed to ask up front to see if there was a fit. And I learned to walk away from stuff too, and that was a big part of it.
And how long did it take before you were comfortable?
It probably took 6 months to a year of walking into offices from a completely cold call perspective, to really get comfortable in my own skin from that aspect. Because I think the first 3 months of it, I was probably banging my head against the wall trying to be somebody I wasn't, and then started to realize, okay, this isn't going to work in the long run. I do need to adapt and use my true strengths to make this work.
And I think that's smart, because too many people try and become something that they're not, and it comes through pretty clear.
Yeah, it's the phrase "fake it till you make it's" out there all the time. I kind of appreciate some of it, but at the same time, you got to know your own process and what's going to work for you.
Because what you did have was the deep understanding of what the product did.
Correct. Yeah, I had the background, I had the knowledge, I understood the science behind the testing I was selling, I understood the clinical disease state. I was great at studying that and understanding that going into the conversation. I think what I found with that role with Quest was a real opportunity from a formal sales perspective to cut my teeth and really go at my first outside sales role. Um, and then what I found though was that their testing menu was so broad that I couldn't be the expert that I wanted to be in every case. And that's kind of what led me to search for some of the future opportunities that I got into. So
Yeah. And how did you develop your skills? I mean, was it planning before each call, reviewing each call?
I think there was a lot of that, and it wasn't so much a formal process for me. A lot of it was really within my own network of other salespeople and sales leaders
Yeah.
that I would, before going into call and talk to somebody early in my career and say, all right, what am I thinking about this correctly? What would you do in this scenario? And as a good salesperson, I'm a shameless thief when it comes to ideas and things like that when we're in the selling process. So taking other people's advice and then kind of debriefing on the back end too, calling a trusted advisor after you lose a deal and walking them through and saying, what did I do wrong here? What happened that we didn't work this out? Because I felt like it was a sure thing.
What,
So probably
what
those
was
activities, I think.
what were some of those mistakes?
I'd say going in kind of guns blazing at first and making assumptions about client needs and kind of fitting them. I'm like, well, you need this product, like, and this is the
Right.
way that
Makes
you need
sense.
it.
Yeah.
And there's no reason why you shouldn't be asking me for this. So kind of trying to fit the square peg in the round hole type of thing and forcing it a little bit was probably my biggest mistake at first. And then
Yeah.
realizing how important fit was, I think allowed me to stop spending time with clients that really, for whatever reason, my side, their side was not a good fit for the product or the relationship or going forward, and started spending all my time with clients that, were going to be productive for the business and for my compensation too. So
So were you getting better at sensing that through questions and stuff?
a lot of that was, and coming from the analytical background, you kind of have a one-track mind. You work a little bit like like you're going down a spreadsheet asking questions. Like, okay, I got this list of
Survey. Yeah.
questions. Yeah, I got this list of questions I need to get through. And then you become more of the emotionally intelligent. You're picking up on buying signals. You're picking up on some of the subtle, maybe not the key stakeholders, but the influencers in the room and what their feedback is. And you change your questions and you change kind of direction of the conversation based on that feedback, definitely. So I was able to learn that, absolutely, but not without a lot of mistakes.
Yeah. And when did you have a particular breakthrough or epiphany?
I felt that there was a big client that I closed at the end of my tenure with Quest Diagnostics that kind of
Yeah.
was my jumping off point, and felt like, okay, I really guided this deal from beginning to end. There were a lot of stakeholders. It was a complex deal. We ironed out all the objectives. We got it from a pricing perspective that was something that was amicable for both parties. We felt like it was a good deal. And to my knowledge, that contract is still in place like 8, 9 years later. So
Wow.
feel really good about that. And that was a jumping off point for me to say, okay, I'm really ready to go out and go for something bigger. So
Yeah.
that was my thought process.
And do you have any of that apprehension anymore?
Not really.
Yeah.
It's kind of gone out the window. And the people closest to me kind of have seen maybe a small transformation as far as being a little bit more willing to go outside my shell. But I was definitely really shy growing up. Led me to be a bench chemist in college, and then after that, it did take a while, like you said. But I feel like I'm much more confident in my own skin, know my strengths, know my weaknesses, and try to position myself so we're using the strengths more often than not.
And do you focus like on your purpose or your why or your long-term goal? Is that what drives you, or is it?
A lot of it has been just the freedom that the lifestyle and the earnings give me as a salesperson, and that's what's really attractive. Seeing my parents had that growing up because they did both own their own businesses. from a compensation standpoint, they didn't have the freedom, but from a lifestyle standpoint, they were their own boss. They figured it out. They spent a lot of time with us as a family, and I really valued that. I know I don't have a family of my own yet. Got married a couple of years ago, but talking about kids down the road, and it's a priority for me to be able to have flexibility when that time comes. And I think there's things in the sales world that offer you that, and really get to run your own business, so to speak, versus clock in, clock out, and worried about you taking 10, 15 minutes here to do something that you need to do. So that's something that has always been attractive. I've been really lucky to have those types of roles.
And when you contrast yourself against other people, what do you see that you do much better?
I think that's a tough question for me, because I don't think of myself as that different in terms of, maybe a skill set or anything like that. I think desire is a lot of it, and focus. Every once in a while I see myself getting muddied down in activities and quantity of things, trying to hit metrics for, I've worked for small and big companies, and there's always been key metrics to hit that. I think one of the first experiences with your content was when I saw you on LinkedIn joking about just, oh yeah, that you need me to put this in the CRM, and then you want me to read it back to you afterwards. And it's like, oh yeah, that's and I've had those experiences with leaders, and I don't even want to blame them, because I think a lot of it is forced on them by the culture that says, okay, this is just how we do it, and this is what we need to do. We need to have this many activities. We need to enter them in this way. And I think you're playing to the lowest common denominator there. So I think whenever I find myself in one of those moments that I'm worrying about that type of stuff, I take a look at my opportunity pipeline and refocus myself to say, okay, what are the 5 most important things that I could be doing right now to close these deals that are getting close, and refocus that way. And that, I think, helps me stay motivated. I think sometimes those metrics do the opposite of probably what they're intended to do. But
right. Yeah. Because first, managers don't care how hard you work. They care how hard they work.
Exactly. That's a great way to put it.
And they think you're going to not catch this one little deal if you don't call all 500 people that day.
Exactly. So that 499th person is just as important as their mind as the first one that you targeted, that you knew was going to be a great prospect, and ends up, going on to be the biggest deal of the year. But, they see that there's the activity metrics to hit. So
right. And people don't remember that, time is a zero-sum game.
That's a great point. Yeah, it really is.
There's no pause button.
When you're using it on activities that aren't really driving your business in the long term, it's tough. And I think I don't know, in my experience, you kind of bring down the top salespeople to the level a little bit of some of the worst salespeople, because they are still having to play that game of, okay, well, yeah, I only visited one client today. I'm supposed to visit 2 to 4, and now I have to kind of fudge the numbers. And it's like, okay, I don't want to have to do that. There's no reason, because I know that one client could meet my number for the month, for the quarter, and I need to be spending my time here. But the understanding of that from leadership.
Because I think people overlook the power of analytics in selling.
Yeah, certainly.
Because otherwise you're just reacting to them, or you're pushing them.
Yep.
It is a thinking process. It's a thinking game, not just an activity or a pressure game.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because like when you brought up, like, what are the top 5? You didn't say the top 50.
No, I don't have time to go through the top 50 very quickly. And the top 50, at least for me, don't drive my number. The top 5 drive my number. So it's, you got to have that understanding, I think.
Because at the end of the quarter, if you don't make your number, the number one thing managers say is you didn't focus.
Yeah, it is. Did you focus? Did you prioritize?
Right.
Well, I did on these metrics over here that you had me worrying about. Those look great, but that was halfway to my quota. Yeah, that doesn't look so good. So yeah, it's funny.
And I think when you get autonomy, you get that time and that air to breathe and think about the deals.
Absolutely. And the best leaders that I've had, and like I said, I've been really, really fortunate, really blessed to have a lot of hands-off leaders in my time that have been there at a drop of a hat, though, when I needed them. that have given me that autonomy to fail or succeed on my own, and just really provided a kind of a runway or the resources that I need to go do the job, and otherwise been pretty hands off, which is nice. I think I've had leaders, and I shouldn't say I think, I know I've had leaders and direct managers that have probably taken a lot of bullets and had a lot of conversations with upper management on my behalf, on my teammates' behalf, to keep us focused and to not waste our time with things like that. So I think, some of those people I owe a lot to as well.
And how can you tell when a deal is going to close? How do you tell what are the top 5 versus the top 10 or 20 or 50 or?
I think a lot of it goes into, even before you start to have conversations with the client, you identify your product, your service, you identify the client, and then in those initial conversations, a lot of it comes out whether the fit is there or not.
Yeah.
I get a really good feel early on in a lot of deals I'm a part of now. I think down the road, there's a lot more, sometimes contractual hurdles and things to jump over like that in the negotiating process. But I think at least for me, it happens pretty early on in the process that I can say, okay, I got a really good feeling about this deal. And sometimes that's, I've got a really good feeling about this deal, a year from now. Sometimes I have a really good feeling about this deal next month, but all different types of those situations make up a long-term plan and a pipeline for long-term growth in any position for me. So
And how complex are the deals as far as like number of people involved?
so I've been involved in really different types of businesses so far, at least on the medical side. Worked for After Quest Diagnostics, a couple of molecular diagnostics companies out of the Bay Area, and kind of was the rep in the Midwest and had purview over a handful of states at a time. And it was, go figure out how to sell our products there. So in those deals, I was dealing with everybody from hospital C-suite to purchasing materials management, to the physician that would order the test, to the, educating the staff that would actually perform it. And I don't know, anywhere from 3 to 10 stakeholders, depending on how complex the system was. And then now in my new role, something similar. I'm actually in the pharma services group with Thermo Fisher Scientific. The legacy business is called Patheon. It's a really complex sale. They give us a lot of tools in terms of subject matter experts and things like that to help us through the process. But there are a lot of stakeholders. I'm selling to companies that are developing drugs and vaccines now, and selling our services for development and manufacturing for that. So I think there's, I've stepped from one complex sale with one type of buyer into a new complex sale with a different type of buyer. And I love the challenge. And I've definitely gotten back to using my biochem roots a little bit now in this new role, which has been fun. But it's always been a complex sale for me, which is an advantage, but the deal process takes a lot longer, takes a lot more planning, and takes a lot more, I guess, analytics to dive into each opportunity.
Yeah. And what skill or superpower do you wish you had?
Mind reading, probably.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, because there's throughout my career, I've encountered a lot of people that don't have very much power, but what power they do have, they exercised for some reason to block the deal.
Yeah.
And I would love to get a look inside their mind and be able to call them out and say, okay, what's level with me here? What's the real problem? What's going on in your personal life that you have no power, that you're taking this out. The only power you do have, you're taking out on me, when you know that this would be a great thing for you, for the patients, for the physician, for whoever the stakeholders are in the deal, and going forward. So that's, I think mind reading would be great to have.
And do they typically have veto power, or do they just try and sabotage it?
Some of both. You find, depending on, sometimes I've encountered deals where the key stakeholder is the most passive person in the world, and will get vetoed by these stakeholders that have no business even being in the room. Yeah. So finding out how to get around and navigate some of those relationships, it's a challenge. I've learned also to assume, I guess, along those lines that sometimes the key decision maker, they're going to be the one that physically signs it, but maybe there's somebody next to them in their ear all the time that's actually really driving it. And it's, can't assume on that either.
Well, that's it. I think a lot of people think it's this formal committee that meets every Thursday at 2 p.m.
Yep.
And it's this, weird inner network of people, because when they're spending a lot of money, they're going to ask people their thoughts and opinions.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And there are going to be people that bring their thoughts and opinions to the table
Yeah.
that, may or may not have any business doing it. But
Or any real context.
yeah, absolutely.
And I bet in your space, a lot of people act like they have a lot more context than they do have.
Certainly, but you got to understand what, I guess, going back to the stakeholders, what's important to each stakeholder, making sure
Yes.
we're satisfying that in the relationship and satisfying that in terms of the solution that we're proposing, and then delivering on that once we get everything set.
Plus, it's probably not very logical sometimes. It's very personal. How's it going to affect their day?
That's part of the part that bothers me the most.
Yeah.
With the analytical background, I've come to adapt and learn more, and I think my emotional intelligence has gone up a lot since 8-9 years ago starting this. And it's I've always been kind of that one track mind that if it doesn't make logical sense, why are we doing it? But
Right.
that's not always how things are driven. So
Not at all. And have you found a way of developing that, like curiosity, empathy?
yeah, I think honestly, I, visiting with my friends that are those salespeople that do have the gregarious personality, that are naturally that way,
Yeah.
and kind of running through scenarios with them has been really helpful, because those will be the first things they think of. It's like, oh, well, this person's unhappy because it's going to affect their day. It's going to add 15 minutes. They're going to have to stay late and do this process at the end of the day now, when they didn't have to do that before. And I was like, wow, I guess I didn't even consider that. This was a $2 million deal. That we're putting capital in the hospital. We're doing all this, and this person wants to sabotage it because they're going to have to stay late and clean it.
Yeah. Or they get
So it's
overtime that you're going to take away.
exactly,
All
yeah, on the
these,
flip side.
yeah, red herring issues that everyone's concerned about.
Yep, absolutely.
Because I bet that market, people do tend to stay in jobs longer than like other markets.
Yeah, I think so. I've also seen, transition from physicians and different stakeholders transitioning around cities, around regions, and definitely now been around long enough to see that process. And in the medical field, I think there's something unique about the physicians as the decision maker, which now is a lot less than it was before, probably in the 90s, 2000s, where physicians had all the power. Now you've got a lot of consolidation in the industry, and decisions being driven from the top, more from a value-based perspective, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but it's
Yeah.
it's changed the selling process for sure. Where now you still have to have physician buy-in, but then going down the road, you really aren't across the finish line until you make a really good value-based case. Um, and then the understanding of the relationship of networking with physicians in their infancy, in their residency, meeting them when they're young, getting an understanding of their priorities, and then you see them move around in your territory and other territories, and understand how that buying process is going to work in the future.
Cool. And what advice would you have to people interested in getting into this space, going from a technical background into sales?
Do it.
Yeah.
um, just don't be scared to fail. There's gonna be plenty of times in small instances, and obviously we're all trying in every role to succeed and to do the best we possibly can, and no one ever wants to get fired from a job. I've been very blessed to have success in all my roles so far, but there's been a lot of small failures that have led up to that. Failing in the way that I'm prospecting, having to adjust the way that I'm targeting these clients, failing in understanding the client needs, failing when I get in front of clients. Those conversations that end, the deal doesn't move forward, and you're looking back on it, you're like, I could have said this, and they would have, it would have shifted the conversation, the woulda, coulda, shoulda. So not being afraid to fail, but owning the failures and looking at them as real learning opportunities, I think is the key if you are going to make the jump.
And did you ever feel like, oh man, I went through all this training and school and now I'm doing this? Either an entitlement or what you were.
Yes and no, because I don't know. I came to appreciate the art and the subtleties of it. That I didn't have a lot of resentment for salespeople as a technical person, if that's what you're getting at. Because I know there are those
Oh,
technical people that kind of do, resent the amount of money or the lifestyle or anything about the sales person. But
what I have seen when people have, because you get into sales either because you can't do anything else or you're money motivated. So
yeah,
you
that's
clearly
fair.
could do something else,
Yeah,
but you were money motivated. And sometimes they get into sales and they're like, it's scrappy, right? It's not a textbook. It's not the way you're taught the world works.
Yeah, I definitely saw some of that at first. I guess I didn't dislike it because I was exposed to a little bit, taking some business classes, understanding that this, not everything in the real world is linear in terms
Yeah.
of progression. There's steps forward, there's steps back, there's steps sideways when you're going through deals and learning how to navigate, different selling environments. But I guess kind of staying humble about it. Never wanted to be a know-it-all. I think I know my strengths and I know what I don't know. That big dark area where I need help from other people. And I guess I've always wanted to be the person that goes and learns as much as possible, but never wanted to be that, that know-it-all, so to speak.
Cool. Hey, appreciate your time today. Where can people go to connect and follow you?
LinkedIn's probably the best place. Michael S. Ford at LinkedIn. Right now, like I said, working at Thermo Fisher. Patheon is the legacy business and the pharma services group. And really appreciate your time. Appreciate the content that you put out there and the humor that you add to it. Because I think there's a lot of people out there that in your type of role that take themselves really seriously. And, some of them have really good content to deliver, but I think it gets lost sometimes when you don't add a little levity. So I always appreciate seeing your videos pop up and following your podcast.
When you have that motivation to make more money or to be more successful or to live a different lifestyle, I think that's a major driver why we're in sales. Because if you're just comfortable with a good salary and a 5% bump every year or less, and, waves of pressure instead of that constant pressure, the other jobs, see, I always found them kind of boring. Boring in the sense of I would work my butt off and then you would beg for a raise and they would maybe begrudgingly give you 5%. You could go out and get another job, but then you have to go learn another company, work with another boss and another team, and hope that what they said the job was is what it turns out to be. Rarely is. So in our career, B2B sales is the best kept secret out there. When I talk to people who are in B2C or in college, they just don't believe me. They think I'm trying to sell them something. I was like, oh, get on the internet and check it out. When people are making, $500,000, $1 million a year without the bottom risk, with, 100, 150K bases, meaning that that's their guarantee, which is better than most people's target income. And frankly, that's how I figured it out. Early in my career, I was the engineer that the sales reps brought out, and we were at dinner, and they told me how much money they made. And I go, yeah, but there's downside, right? Well, the base is pretty. Their base was higher than mine, meaning that if they just showed up, they made more than me. And, and I didn't learn about the pressure until I was in the job. So if the pressure's not your thing, sales isn't your thing. But, I was working 7 days a week, going in on the weekends, working my butt off and, living, pretty much 100% for a job. And then the base, the salary was the starting point for the salespeople. And I go, I want to give this a shot. And I think once you get into sales, the hard part is during the day, during the game of sales, you have to have a level of confidence, a level of comfort that you know what you're doing. And that's good. You need that. But after the game is over at 5 o'clock or when you want to take a break, you need to take your game and really analyze it and find little nuances to become better. And not in just the knowledge better. Yes, you got to write it down, but in the practice better, the performance of getting better. Those are the people that become the A players. Too many of us get stuck in that B player, Dunning-Kruger effect, where you get just good enough And then when it doesn't work, you assume it's something outside of yourself because you were good before. And this is the trick and the trap of sales. The other one, and the most common, is we know it, but we don't know it when we need to know it. We know it afterwards. The most common statement I heard, and I even used it myself, was, I knew that was going to happen. Meaning that you had the knowledge, but you didn't have the preparation. Meaning you did not prevent it from happening. You knew it was going to after it happened. But it's kind of like knowing how a magic trick works once you're shown it. And I see this on LinkedIn all the time. You get the sales 101. Yeah, it's 101, but why are you still selling cell phones? Really? It's 101 and you're making $80K a year? I think it might be better. Or it's obvious. I love the obvious one as well. Yeah, it's obvious now that someone told you. But this is getting away from the point that we are performers. And to get better, we have to have a method, a practice of getting better, much like every other performer. And what we don't get in sales is that luxury of just knowing it. Taking the sales test and passing it doesn't pay us commission. Winning deals pays us commission. And that's it. To win deals, we got to get into accounts. Have you noticed it gotten harder over the last few years, especially now, that you have to connect with people? No one wants to hear your commercial. I mean, your value proposition. Did I say that wrong? Did I? Your sales-ready messaging. I'd say 99% of the stuff I see out there is all rep-centric, not client-centric. And prospects don't think they have a problem yet. They're cold. If they were warm, yeah, they'd have the symptom and the recognition of a problem. But even those, they don't want to convert or become visible until they want something. Well, that's kind of difficult because by the time they want something, they kind of have a preconceived notion, most likely incorrect, of what your product does and how it's different than the alternatives and what happens if they don't get it. See, sales has become really hard. Did I say that out loud? Yeah, it has. But to get better at it, you have to practice. The good news is most people in sales are pretty bad. Not bad people, but just either overconfident, relying on their brand, their territory, their install base, and they haven't had to really stretch. But we're all kind of stretching now. And it's a hirer's market, meaning there's a lot more reps out there than there are jobs. So to become great, we have to become hyper competitive, hyper smart, hyper empathetic to our clients and what they're thinking and how we can help them. I hope this has helped. I love interviewing great salespeople. If you are one or you know one, hit me up on LinkedIn. And if I don't get back to you shortly, just keep going. Kind of busy. If you want to check out the courses, B2B revenue.com. You like that word? That's my favorite word, revenue, next to commission. Second favorite word. And there's two major ones. Now, I also have a frequently asked questions video that you can watch. The most common question I get is, which course is right for me? Okay. And then my response is always, well, what problem are you trying to solve? And then people don't know their problem. Okay. So let's take a look at your pipeline. Are you getting enough things into it? Are you having enough cold outreach conversations? Or if you get enough inbound, that's fine. You don't need that course. But if you don't get enough inbound and the pipeline is kind of thin, then start the conversation, get the meetings, of course, for you. Let's say you have a good pipeline, but things are dragging. Things aren't closing. They're closing smaller. The deals start over. I'm a little overconfident. It slips from 1 month, 1 quarter to another. They still talk to me, but they're not buying it. I don't understand where it is, and I don't understand how to have control over it. The course for that is winning the complex sale. And what do you get out of it? Well, it's not a rehash of anything you've seen anywhere else. It's game changer, because what you're doing is talking with the very best salespeople in the world. Companies are not in the course. It's individual reps who are committed to making themselves better for themselves, as well as entrepreneurs. And what this brings to the course is the hardest of the hard. This is not people who just have extra time and money. This is people who really want to develop their game. So what that brings is a sense of really exploring the profession, exploring the game, how to have direction, momentum, and control over your deals, how to start conversations with strangers that turn into business discussions. And when you hear the success stories, when you hear people going from doubting it, because it's different, it's not about pitching, it's about talking, it's about conversing, engaging with other people. People doubt it, and you can hear them go through the process, and then the light bulb goes off. They get a deal. Their calendar is full of great conversations, and you get to hear it. It's all in there. There's 3 major components. There's the core lessons, and then there's a chapter about office hours. Office hours I've been recording for about 2.5 years now, so there's a lot of them in there. I label them based off of the topic so people can pick and choose. You can fast forward through them, consume them at your pace, not mine. And the other part is one-on-ones. There's no limit to them. I don't count them. There's a calendar link in the first chapter to schedule them. And what it is a half hour where you and I sit down and apply the course to your particular situation. I do ask that you take the core content first so that it's not, teaching the core lessons, and that you start applying it so that we have a case study to base it off of, not just flipping it onto me. Hey, what would you do? Okay, well, tell me where you are in the game, what worked, what didn't, so that we can kind of hone it. And what you do is you get to hear other people go through that process. It's all anonymous. No one's name, company, customers, product is mentioned in it. Don't need it. This is about process strategy and thinking through how to win the complex sale and how to get those critical meetings. That's it. Are you checking out my YouTube channel? Go subscribe there. If you see my content on LinkedIn, please give it a like, comment, and share. If you see the company page there, please follow it. I ran out of connections on LinkedIn, so just follow it. I think you get the same capability as a connection. And that's it. We'll see you next time.